Wonderful. So I guess 10 years ago I met Yair, and then in 2006 I was leaving. At that point I was international trade manager for the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, and I think that was at about the time that Stephen, you joined the mayor's office as head of his international trade office there, and did amazing things. Unfortunately, I wasn't in LA to see that amazing dynamic work that you did. I was heading the San Bernardino County Economic Development Agency's International Trade Office. We opened up our offices in Shanghai to attract foreign direct investment into the Inland Empire. I was out there for 4 years when I decided to come back to LA. And in that period of time, I was so amazed at how LA had changed. I mean, I came back to LA in 2010, and I hadn't really been out to LA like on a continuous basis throughout those 5 years or so. And when I came back and I started hanging out in downtown, I just couldn't believe like just the exponential changes that were happening. And so we're going to be talking a lot about how innovation and globalization and international trade actually has affected Los Angeles as a whole. And then we'll take it anywhere these two gentlemen and the gentleman on the call want to take it. So this is a very intimate conversation. I think that we'll let them kind of we'll moderate a little bit, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. But for now, I'll ask them to introduce themselves. I'll take no more than 2 minutes to kind of give us your background, a little bit about what you're currently doing. And so why don't we start with Yair, and then Stephen, and then the gentleman on the call, who is Tom. Wonderful.
Thank you, Moises. Hi, everybody. My name is Yair Crane. I basically have lived or traveled or worked and studied in about 15 different countries. I moved to LA when I was 7.5, and to echo the comments of the audience, I love LA because despite traffic and some other issues, we have the most diverse population of any single metropolitan center in the world. And because of that, I think we have not only great food, as I was just telling Stephen, but we have really amazing minds that come here, and innovation plays a huge role. One of the things I'm very involved in is the energy sector and the transportation sector from the perspectives of helping companies basically commercialize and accelerate clean technologies. And it works. We do a lot of work with public sector, policymakers, investors, utilities, and do a lot of very strategic matchmaking because all good innovation can't really scale up, whether it's an app or whether it's a new fuel cell, unless you have the right strategic partners. So I'll leave the rest for the conversation.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Chung. I'm the president of the World Trade Center Los Angeles. Prior to this position, I've been in this position about 2.5 years, almost 3 years. Prior to this, I was with the city of Los Angeles for about 8 years, and those 8 years I was working in the mayor's office mostly. And those 8 years I had 11 different positions, so really got to see different sides of Los Angeles, including a stint at the Port of Los Angeles. So to the audience members that want to talk about entertainment, there's a lot that I want to talk about in terms of the innovation that's happening right now, international attention, why they're coming to Los Angeles, whether it's a company like Wanda investing in Legendary Pictures, or when it comes to innovation, when it comes to other types of technology, whether it's cancer aid coming from Australia, really connecting our oncology center directly with the patients, to food innovation that we're really fortunate to have here in the Los Angeles region. I'll use an example later on. Kogi Taco is really transforming the world, and people don't think about how those links are happening. And when it does, it's actually creating this effect that's changing the dynamics of Los Angeles. Because when you go around the world, and last year, just in the last 2 months of the year, I traveled about 51,000 miles across the globe and met a lot of people from Singapore, Mexico, different. And when you ask them what do they think about Los Angeles, it's always, what do you guys think? What is Hollywood? Hollywood is the number one thing they say. The number two thing they say is Hollywood. The number three thing they say is Hollywood. The number four thing they say is traffic. So this is the time that we need to change that message. And to your point, in terms of what we can do, it's actually not our international students that are going to be able to change it. It's for the rest of the Angelenos and the U.S. People who are living here that can actually make that change for yourself and folks like myself, who's an immigrant from Hong Kong. But there's a way for us to integrate ourselves. That it's a call to action. So at the end of this conversation, it's going to be not just an interactive dialogue, but it's a call to action for you guys. And I'll explain that later.
Tom, you're on the phone. It's to you. It's up to you now to give us your background and anything that you're currently working on that you would like us to know about before we proceed.
Great. So I can barely hear anybody, so I apologize. You want me to give you a bit of background, and I'm assuming what's going on in South Australia? Is that the question?
Yeah. Your background overall. Yeah.
Great. So I'm originally from Canada, but I've lived in New York and LA for about 30 years. A couple of years ago, I received a distinguished talent visa to move to Australia in and around the same time that Steve Wozniak moved to Australia under the same program, which is focused on people who are good at doing stuff, and pretty quickly assessed that there was a big opportunity here in South Australia, given the fact that they'd spent quite a bit of time and money in building infrastructure here in their pivot from manufacturing to innovation. So I actually, as a volunteer, jumped in to sort of take the lead in identifying and executing the Gig City initiative, which allowed us to visit the White House in October of 2016 and meet with the chief advisor on science and technology to the White House, at which point Adelaide became the first Gig City outside the U.S. to join the U.S. Ignite Gig City Smart City Initiative. Shortly thereafter, I became the chief innovator for South Australia, and I don't know how much news you hear about what's going on in South Australia, but recently we announced the largest renewable battery was launched by Elon Musk. Elon was also here about a month ago announcing all things space, including commercial space travel from the Space Congress that we had here about a month ago. We just launched the Australian Machine Learning Institute here a couple of weeks ago. We've just opened one of the most advanced hospitals in the world, the Royal Adelaide Hospital, and the largest biotech precinct in the Southern Hemisphere. And we now have a very burgeoning new space program, and in fact just last week have announced a launch site with mission control for nanosatellites. So there's a lot going on here in South Australia, and I think the opportunities are that clearly barriers are getting lower and lower, but it's also the case that the government here has had a continuity of public policy that has allowed quite a bit of investment into infrastructure, which has allowed this pivot from manufacturing to innovation to occur, pretty smoothly.
So thank you, Tom. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what you mentioned in terms of investing in infrastructure, something that you've seen in Australia. And certainly, we're here in LA. It's not a foreign idea to us. Certainly, with the Olympics coming here, it's sped up a lot of these large infrastructure development projects. So I'm wondering, Stephen, you've been working in LA for a long time now, and now heading the World Trade Center, Los Angeles. That is in partnership with the LA Economic Development Corporation. So you're at the forefront of really understanding the importance of infrastructure and how to leverage that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've seen it change since you first started? Anything around the things that have galvanize it to speed up more, and any challenges that you see that we need to be aware of?
So the opportunities are there, but I want to focus a bit on the challenges you mentioned. I go back to what I said earlier. When I go internationally, a lot of people don't know LA. They only know us as Hollywood. What they don't know is that LA is actually the #1 manufacturing center in the United States, with over 360,000 manufacturing jobs right here. In fact, most Angelenos don't know that either. Most people don't know that we have the #1 container port and #2 container port in North America, which is Port of LA and Port of Long Beach. The two ports combined together, we control 43% of all ocean-going cargo coming into the United States. I'll say that again. One region controls 43% of all ocean-going cargo coming into the United States, which means if our ports shut down today, $2 billion worth of goods will not be entering the United States in one single day. So when people are talking about international trade is bad for business, maybe it's not so great when you look at different things, and we're going to talk about NAFTA and other things as well. But for Los Angeles, for California, this is our lifeline. We have over 860,000 jobs that's connected to the ports alone. That's just ocean-going cargo. Don't forget, we also have LAX, the #1 origin and destination airport in the world. Meaning, when you look at Atlanta, for example, they have more passengers coming in and out because they double count. They count the people that are going into Atlanta. People don't, sorry, I'm going to say something bad about Atlanta. Not everybody wants to stay in Atlanta and explore Atlanta. They transfer over to Cincinnati to other locations, so they get counted twice. The people getting on and off a plane directly from their location to LA, that makes us the #1 origin and destination airport in the world. We just surpassed 80.9 million passengers last year. And this is a huge number because it feeds into our tourism number, which just this week we announced a brand new number and brand new record again. Over 48 million visitors to Los Angeles last year. And these visitors spent well over $29 billion in the local economy. So you can see how that's all tying together. The infrastructure that the government and the private sector has invested in the ports and the airport has stimulated the opportunity for trade to come in here, as well as passengers and visitors and tourists. And with that, once they get over here, they want to go to Harry Potter ride. They want to go to Disneyland. So that's feeding into another sector. On top of it, they have to stay at hotels. Why do you think downtown LA right now is building with all these new Chinese and Asian development, with Shanghai Greenland putting $1.3 billion into the Metropolis project? Right next door, you have Hazen's putting $700 million into the W Hotel project. Down the street from there, not less than a block away, is Oceanwide from Beijing, another $1.3 billion. And don't forget, we just opened the brand new Wilshire Grand Hotel, $1.3 billion, the tallest building west of the Mississippi. All that's fed in because of the infrastructure that we developed. Now, this is another thing I'm so excited about because we're making it right. We talked about the #4 major issue for people when they think of Los Angeles, which is traffic. I think Angelenos know that's the bane of our existence right now in LA. And we decided in November to vote for Measure M, $120 billion dedicated to transportation project. This is going to be the largest infrastructure investment in the United States, period. So, with that said, a lot of international companies are flooding to Los Angeles right now because they want a piece of that contract. China Rail is here, Bombardier is here, Conquistario is here, Ansado Brero is here. From all over the world trying to secure that $120 billion contract. And for us, now we're getting the best of the best around the world, providing solutions, whether it's subway, whether it's light rail, whether it's Hyperloop. You know, you're really getting these infrastructure development projects. So I'm just basically touching on very lightly on whether it's port, whether it's airport, whether it's public transportation. But there's so many other things which I hope we're exploring as well. I'm glad that Tom brought up space exploration. Don't forget, SpaceX is here, and there's a reason why they're here. And with that, we also have Virgin Galactic. So instead of just basically the aerospace and defense, our next transportation exploration opportunity really lies in space exploration. So I don't think I'm the first to announce it. I hope I'm not breaking any news to anybody. Sir Richard Branson has made an agreement through Virgin Galactic in Long Beach. And so the first international space concert will be hopefully done out of the Los Angeles region. Lady Gaga will be the first performer in space. Talk about innovation, right? That's happening right here in LA, so I'll leave it at that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, as Stephen brought up a lot of good points. I think one intersection where I think you can chime in a lot in is capital coming in from the Pacific Rim. And you've been very involved with actually some of those transactions. Kind of tell us a little bit about what that world is like, and how do you position the opportunities here that attracts these investors from overseas?
That's a very good question. What we've really been seeing the last probably 5 years, in addition to the massive real estate investments, entertainment investments from the Pacific Rim, is we're having a lot of companies from Korea and China, to the extent Japan as well. They are attracted to the market that we have here because really, whether it's an esports thing or whether it's a clean transportation technology, the market for their product is huge here. We're also seeing a lot of investment coming in from Europe, where you have companies from Eastern Europe, Germany, former Soviet republics like Ukraine, Sweden, Norway. They're also attracted to LA because of the talent pool that's here. And so they may have engineering or sort of a core of their company in their home country, but in order to attract the right talent, they want a composition here, and in order to service that giant market, they need to have those resources available. As far as Asia Pacific or Pacific Rim capital, we're seeing a lot of investors look to California companies, specifically LA companies, to license technology, back in their home country. But we're also seeing those entities invest in California and LA-based companies as well in order to co-create intellectual property. And that's being done for many reasons. Again, Innovation Conference, they realize the talent pool that's here. They realize that they have the expertise of their U.S. or LA-based partner here. And also, again, in order to really, commercialize and scale up the fastest, they realize that they want to invest and put a stronghold or beachhead in a U.S. city like LA, which will allow them to then spread to the rest of the U.S. market. So there's a lot of factors that are involved in that. One key issue that Steve talked about transportation is we're also seeing companies from Quebec, companies from France, companies from there's a Brazilian company that was coming here. They are also looking to sell their technology for clean transportation here in Los Angeles. They're not going to New York. They're not going to Atlanta. They're not going anywhere else because of the size of the market here, but also because of the significant problems we have here. So they know that if their technology comes in, they use the innovation and the intellectual IQ we have here from the universities, and then scale up in this market, then they can go to pretty much anywhere else in the world. And I would say also in terms of funding, you're seeing other industries like clean technology, energy, infrastructure, and we're also seeing now investments, believe it or not, in apparel and fashion, where, again, there's co-creation of IP being made here in Los Angeles, but a lot of the manufacturing and distribution is for markets outside of the LA.
Thank you so much. You mentioned the competition across different regions. You mentioned New York, Atlanta. Tom, you've seen a lot of these regions. You lived in New York, I believe you said. LA. You're in Australia now. What are your thoughts in terms of what within a city or a region fosters innovation? Can you give us your quick 2-minute rundown on thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think basically, there are some basic drivers that are required for innovation. Adelaide in particular is lucky because there's 3 pretty highly regarded universities in a city with about 1.2 million people. There's actually also Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon also has a university set up here as well. So there's really kind of 3.5 universities for a city of a very reasonably small size. The other component that I think is is significant is to look at the demographics and the in this geographical region. So the Asia Pacific region is growing at a remarkable rate, and in fact is the fastest growing middle class in the history of the world. In the next 12 years, the middle class in the Asia region will be 10 times the size of the middle class in the U.S. In North America. So when you combine a really knowledgeable population, such as Adelaide, with the geographical and time zone connection to the largest growing middle class in the history of civilization, it's a recipe for success. It also happens to coincide, obviously, with Industry 4.0 and the issues of connectivity and the ways in which we can move data around and that sort of thing. So I think we just happen to be right now at a particularly interesting point in time where serendipitously a lot of things are converging all at the same time. The acceleration of the middle class in this particular time zone, and a lot of accelerations in technological innovation. So it creates the right conditions, I think, for things to take place here.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna take a quick detour, then come back to this line of thought, and I'm gonna do that to ask Yair, who is probably the youngest of us four here, and ask him just to give us an idea about your career decision that compelled you to get into this kind of work, and for the students or for the recent grads that are in the audience, what would be the tips that you would give them if they wanted to kind of follow in your footsteps or be really successful within the international trade field?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because one of the things that I would mention to the students that are already studying here is, as I said in my earlier comments, we have such an international cosmopolitan population here that when I moved here when I was 7.5 years old, I had friends that were Korean American, Vietnamese American, Mexican American, everybody, right? And so immediately my decision when I wanted to go in my career was to do something on an international basis. So if there's any advice I could give about, what are some of the things that I chose that made me successful, is going to a university or school in LA that has an international population and getting to know the other students from other countries. And then I also studied abroad in Taiwan in between my sophomore and junior years. So anybody that has an interest, whether it's Denmark or Hong Kong or anywhere else, that's something that I encourage you all to do. And ultimately, I'm a big nerd. I was a big nerd back then. I still am now. I did a research paper on the 1997-1998 Asian financial crisis. And what that made me realize was the very intense and essential trade relationship that basically the U.S. has with Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific in general. And that's what this lured me to get more involved in learning about the Greater China region. So the other piece of advice I'd say is take classes that you enjoy to take and get internships at places that you may think you may not have a long-term career in, but if you get exposed to something like an international market, you don't know where it will take you. And also find good mentors, because they, they'll always be ready to give you some good advice, but more importantly, they'll also be able to tell you when maybe you should be turning left and you're turning right, and that's always helpful. So,
Stephen, you mentioned earlier the challenges towards the end of your last comment, and so I wanted to give you back the mic to ask you to kind of expand on that, because we're on a really good track right now, and you touched on some of the issues that brought us on this great track. What are some of the issues that we need to keep an eye on to ensure that we stay on track?
I'm going to separate it into, I think, 2 or 3 tracks. I'm going to focus on 2 first. One is things are beyond our control right now. Again, last year when I was traveling around, basically selling Los Angeles, there were a lot of concerns about how Americans are really blocking off the access to the world. And what's been really successful for us in LA is that our message is that, well, we're different. You know we're different because we're not only welcoming you, we are you. The fact that they allowed LA as a general public would allow an Asian American immigrant to represent them at the World Trade Center Los Angeles, in Germany or in Mexico, that speaks to who we are. And tying in a bit with the career advice part as well, I find that folks that were trying to get into international trade, what I do see is sometimes some of our other regional partners from other states, from other regions, they go in and they said, you know what, America's number one. We do this the best, and so we're here to teach you how do we do it best. And when you go there with this attitude, sometimes it's not as helpful. And I think in LA, we've known that we actually get our best when we're learning from others, learning from other cultures, other technology, and we blend it together. What we're very good at is fusion, whether it's fusion food, fusion technology, that's what we're good at. But the thing is, we absorb it, we actually embrace it. With that, that's actually the challenge that we face, is how do we tell this message that during this time where there might be some sentiments that were anti-world, we're disconnecting, that in fact that LA is different, that we want to continue to work with them. That's one of the biggest challenge that we see. On a more practical and policy-wide, our challenge is this: our economy is doing very well, but it's growing to the point where I think LA's residents are getting a bit tired of the growth. And the thing is, I keep on hearing folks complain about the traffic in LA. But when you go to Rome, when you go to Sao Paulo, when you go to Beijing, when you go to any major metropolitan in the world, the traffic is 1,000 times worse, and everybody's like, we're in a big city. It's because when Angelinos, when we think that we're from a podunk backyard city, no, we're a global city. We're the second largest city in the United States. That's just LA City alone, by the way. That's only 4 million people out of the 10.2 million people in LA County. So when you combine with the greater Los Angeles region, which includes Ventura, San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange, and Los Angeles, that's 18.7 million people living in this region. Of course you're going to get traffic, but you also get the best Vietnamese food. You get the best kogi taco. When are you going to be able to mix Korean and Mexican fusion and put it in the truck, add Twitter, and basically start a global phenomenon? That's the price we pay. However, we're not just settling with it. We're actually looking for a solution, and that's why the $120 billion solution is there. So with the challenge, it also comes an opportunity. So I think the challenge from a macro level is the attitude of that we need to welcome others to LA. And from a business standpoint, if traffic continues to get worse and our attitude continues to be very negative, it's not going to help, because that's what people pick up on. We're not going around the world saying, oh my God, besides the weather, how innovative Los Angeles is. We're going around saying Hollywood and traffic, and that's what they pick up on. And people underestimate the soft power of movies. I went to Taiwan, I went to meet with a shipping company, and I asked them why did they put their headquarters, North American headquarters in New York, New Jersey, and not in LA. We're your largest trading partner. It's like, yeah, we watch Training Day, and it's so scary in downtown LA, all the gangs are there. And downtown LA, first of all, maybe we have homeless issues, but gang issues in downtown LA, I don't remember that. And second of all, Training Day, really? That's how you see Los Angeles? So we need to, as a whole, all of us, when we travel, when we tell the world, let's talk about the positive things about Los Angeles and change that perception.
I'm going to add one quick thing, because I talked about this on the car right over here with my director, Dr. Feng An. And it maybe goes to the point for some of the students here. One thing that's a challenge, and we still need to figure out a way to solve it, is we have some of the best minds from all over the world come into our universities, and nobody wants to sponsor them to work and stay and live here. And it's something that there's a lot of industries where there is local talent and it can be filled, but out of the 9 out of 10 companies that I brought on my trade mission from LA, all of them wanted to hire foreign students, and the process and the time and the cost, they said, you know what, we'd rather just not grow our business until we can hire somebody here. So that's another conference, another discussion, but that's a challenge I think that we need to work and collaborate on. So.
Absolutely. The visa issue is something that needs to be addressed. Let me go ahead and 5 more minutes, is that what it is? Okay. So 5 more minutes total? Okay, got it. Thank you. So one quick question for all three of you. What innovation that you see in LA really excites you? We'll start with Tom on the line. Go ahead, Tom.
The question is, what innovation do I see informing LA or informing the world, or?
Well, in your case, we'll let you take the bigger picture view. Go ahead and let us know what one innovation you feel is about to really disrupt across all different industries. What's the one disruptive force that you feel excited about?
Well, there's certainly a lot of energy around blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and certainly California is a center for that. And I think that ledgering systems and security issues around security. I think we're going to see some big opportunities in and around how data is moved around, how money is made, how data is used, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're about to see a sort of almost like another wave in the internet revolution. So I think, but it's going to be in and around money, basically. But we shall see. I could be wrong.
Beautiful. Same question for Stephen and Yair.
The standard response I'm going to give is transportation. Because again, with Hyperloop, that's pretty exciting. But the thing is, you're also seeing autonomous vehicle, some of the technology that's been applied for space technology in LA. People forget that we have a huge aerospace industry here, and a lot of those technology got transferred over to vehicle development. So autonomous vehicle sensor technology, that's really going to change the way that we're going to drive or not drive. And then that's going to also impact the way that we move goods through this area and will affect traffic in that sense. So I think that's very exciting. But I'm trying to think of an answer that's not so kind of normal, I guess. But communication is actually you have to really look at everything, how things have changed over the last 10 years. So when I was working for the city of Los Angeles, November 4th was it, when President Obama won the election the first time in 2008, was the same time when California voted for Prop 8. Banning same-sex marriage here in Los Angeles. I was the West Area Director, so I was in charge of the neighborhood development around the area. And all of a sudden, a riot came out of nowhere. The population was very, very angry, and all of a sudden they start marching. And I had my BlackBerry, this is how far long ago this was, and someone was saying, you got to get on this thing and download it right away because that's how they're communicating. I'm like, what is this Twitter thing? So I downloaded Twitter, and all of a sudden you see people communicating very quickly and said, we're going to be getting onto the freeway right now and stopping the 10 on our way to the federal building. So you can imagine 3,000 people heading towards the freeway, jumping the line, how dangerous that was. Luckily, I downloaded Twitter immediately. LAPD had no clue what Twitter was. I just learned about it, so immediately we activated the mayor's office to communicate with LAPD, and they were able to start forming a barricade to start guiding people towards a peaceful protest. But that's the transformation of technology from back then to now. I think it hasn't, with Snapchat, with everything, you started seeing a little development. I think time is ripe for that transformation to happen again. And I think you're going to see a new type of technology and a new innovation that's going to change the way we communicate. And when that happens, we talked for me, that communication, that example is great, but the thing is people are able to use it. Like I was talking about the Kogi truck, people now can follow, this hot new item that you can go to Culver City and line up for it, and then you go to downtown. I think there's going to be a new technology that's coming on down the line that's going to be very exciting for us.
You kind of stole part of my answer, but I'll take it to a different level. Again, because of the size of the market and the traffic issues, I agree with what Steven said about transportation, but I believe that we're going to be taking it a step further here in Los Angeles on a larger planning level. It was announced that last week that, I forgot the street, but one of the streets in London is going to be basically closed off and converted to bikes, walking. They're going to add parks. So you're going to see a lot of urban renaissance, I think. LA is going to be taking a lead in that. Part of that is the problems. Part of it is the Olympics and the desire to make it a more walkable, livable city. I don't know what kind of radical other ideas will come out of that, but I think you're going to see LA take the lead. 3rd Street, Promenade in Santa Monica. We could probably do 15 of those all around LA, and it'll be great. And LA will be the place to start it. And then I'm not too involved, but I have a lot of friends in the entertainment industry with AR and VR, and a lot of countries all over the world are copying the technology innovations coming out of here. I don't know what's going to be next, but I would say that something in that realm is still going to come out of LA, and that's going to be innovation, that is going to be mimicked all over the world. So I don't know what that is yet, but it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, you mentioned something about VR, AR. I just want to remind everybody that it was Lucky Palmer out of a USC, center, an innovation center that, because of his interactions there and his mentors there, created what ended up being the Oculus now, and created a whole new revolution in an amazing industry that still is in its baby stages and has a long life to go. And I want to add that my quick piece is I'm really excited for discussions around life extension and life longevity, and it actually ties back into space exploration. So we're really hot on all of that here in the Southern California area. I would just ask you to keep an eye out for more of those kinds of discussions. So thank you very much. We're going to now turn it over to you. We'll take a handful of questions from the audience. State your name, and as loud as you can. And David will run over to you, and we'll do that. Can you please go ahead and we'll start with the lady in the back.
I'm jogging gingerly.
Thanks. Hi, Christine Lawton again. I have one comment and one question. Both I'm going to direct to Steven. I'm sitting here in this air-conditioned room wrapped in a blanket, very conscious of my thin blood, which is a result of my first-generation American status, my family having come from the Caribbean. And so my comment is really about fusion and how true I think that is about Los Angeles. I was raised on the East Coast, and it was too cold there, and here I am. Growing up, I think there was maybe one Japanese family who ever went to school with me, two Indian families. Coming here was really eye-opening and wonderful to see the great diversity. I've been very comfortable here, and I've been able to do what I wanted to do, which I didn't think I'd ever be able to do on the East Coast. So I've been a senior executive at Fox and Universal and DreamWorks and Disney. So I just wanted to agree with that. I think fusion is huge. The second is a question, and it is specifically with regard to World Trade Center Los Angeles. You talked about Kogi and Gaga and the hotel building, things like that, and then your role, I guess, in selling Los Angeles. Do you have a specific role? Does the World Trade Center Los Angeles have a role in those deals, or is it more advocacy? And so Just curious about that.
Sure. So the World Trade Center Los Angeles is a nonprofit organization here in LA. We're part of the LA County Economic Development Corporation. So basically, we don't charge for a service. Our mission is to basically help foreign companies come to LA and figure out how to do business. What's the difference between Hollywood, West Hollywood, North Hollywood? Is there a South Hollywood, and why isn't there East Hollywood? Which one's the city? Which one's the neighborhood? How do you get a permit? Those basic questions should be answered, but they're not. And sometimes have to pay $5,000 for a retainer just to have someone to say, hey, West Hollywood's a different city. Go to the city council over there to get a permit, right? So that's the basic thing of the day-to-day what we do. So when it comes to the transaction side, the other part is we also help local companies try to secure contract internationally. So when we know that Japan is going to be sourcing a certain type of technology and we know that there's a match, we try to use our relationship to get them that contract. With that said, sometimes the deal's already cooked and they just basically need someone to push it over to the finish line. So what we do is, again, using our government relationship and our nonprofit relationship, we might be able to get access for these companies to go face-to-face to the elected officials or to the businesses internationally. On the other hand, sometimes a new company comes here to Los Angeles and they just have no clue what to do. So we actually carry them handhold them through the whole process of getting a permit, getting a building, opening a restaurant, getting a license, to introducing them to their clients. So it really depends. We're a very small staff, so we don't advertise our service a lot. Right now it's really working directly with the consul generals around Los Angeles, and they're the government agencies that refer these clients to us, but also through our partners and friends at USC and other locations, they connect us to the folks. When we grow, I've only been here for about 2.5 years, so this is the year where we're gonna scale. Once we get bigger, you're gonna hear more from us.
Another question from the audience?
Hi, I'm Niza, and my question was, you guys talked about the perception from others outside of the U.S. seeing Hollywood or LA as Hollywood or traffic or gangs. What innovative things are you guys doing or proactive things are you guys doing to educate the true reality of Los Angeles and its true potential to the outside world?
Sure, Stephen, you want to take that?
Yeah, yes. Many things. Okay. So there's so many programs.
Do you know each other?
So sometimes what we do is we create new buzzworthy programs. So one of the things we did is LA is also known for our medical facilities. Between USC Keck, UCLA Health, Cedars-Sinai City of Hope Children's Hospital, we got some of the world's best institutions here. So a few years ago, what we did is we brought the 5 hospitals together, created an agreement with China Southern Airlines, along with LADC, the mayor's office, and LA Tourism and Convention Board, went to Guangzhou, signed an MOU agreement with the government over there to promote medical travel, so that the Chinese visitors who need to basically have open heart surgery that they might not be able to get the same services in Guangzhou can fly on the first class plane with China Southern Airlines, lie flat in the bed, come through LAX, go to City of Hope or Cedars-Sinai, have the operation and recover here comfortably. Meanwhile, they're paying all cash, so it helps with the system and it's kind of subsidize our need to work with some of the local folks that might not be able to pay as well. So with that, we brought the mayor of Los Angeles with us, and when the mayor of Los Angeles went to Guangzhou, CCTV and all the media started covering it. It became a huge advertising for basically a full year for one single trip. So sometimes we use these kind of partnership. Speaking of Guangzhou, the other thing we did is basically we brought, again, the mayor is there, so we took advantage of this one trip and had the mayor of Guangzhou, the mayor of Los Angeles, and we invited the mayor of Auckland, New Zealand to come join us. Turns out that the 3 of us are sister cities with each other. So we renewed the sister city partnership and entered a new agreement called the Tripartite Economic Alliance. Every single year, each city is responsible for hosting a summit. So the other 2 cities are promising to bring about 25 investors and companies for that matchmaking, specifically focused on certain industry. And so the first year, LA hosted the first one. We had about 450 people come to LA for that event. Next year, it got support, so Auckland got 800 people there. And just this past year, we finalized the 3rd leg of it back in Guangzhou with over 1,000 people. So all these deals were done, including a deal that UCLA got a contract with a company called RNF to help them open the hospital in China using UCLA technology. So that's the quick examples of what we do, but there's no standard approach. But we're always looking for new ideas. So if you have anything that you guys would like to share with us, please let us know.
And I have a question. So this question is for Tom in Australia. So Tom, you went to school at Pepperdine. You know about Los Angeles and the West Coast. You're trying to build Adelaide and South Australia as a major hub for innovation. How do you position against Los Angeles? Where do you see our weaknesses?
You know, it's funny. I was actually thinking about the opposite.
Good. I like that answer.
Yeah. So this year we had TechStars created first office in the Asia Pacific region in Adelaide. TechStars is one of the biggest tech accelerators in the world. It's being run by a guy from Kentucky who moved here, and there were over 400 applications to move to Adelaide from 85 countries, and one of the 10 companies that was picked was a company from Southern California, which is doing quite well. It's a company called ARC, Advanced Rocket Corporation, and they build rocket engines for nanosatellite liftoff. Typically, those engines take about 3 to 6 months to make at about $500,000, and they can make them in about 3 days for $5,000 using advanced manufacturing. Well, they're now working between Adelaide and Southern California. So I think that just to take off on the point that I was making before, I think the opportunity here is for California to access this massive growing Asian market through South Australia, which has been known throughout the last 2 centuries as having a very strong rule of law, very similar values to the U.S. As part of the Five Eyes, and shares intelligence between the Five Eye countries, and yet have access to this emerging market. So I think we have to see these bridges as these as opportunities to build more bridges and create more connections between what's going on in California and what's going on in Asia, and perhaps through this innovation hub in southern Australia.
As I said to you both, I'd want to get Steve and Tom to work together, so I'll be introducing you as well. So, well, good. I think we're ready for some alcohol on here. So, Tom, why don't you have a drink for us? You can send me a bill.
I will salute you all with a glass of sparkling Shiraz made in my own vineyard.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thanks so much, Tom, for being with us from down under. We really appreciate it. I will talk to you later. And thank you to the panel.
Thank you.
You have one question? One question for Steve.
No, I mentioned early on I have one advocacy to do for this group is a call to action. To your point in terms of how do we change, how do we make sure that students like yourself get to stay, we talked about this. Tom talked about this as well, because if Australia has a visa program that's going to attract talent to them, and President Macron from France just introduced another visa to bring all our talents, we should be doing the same thing, but we're not.
We're doing the opposite.
But that can change. It's a participatory democracy that we have in this country, and we need to participate. You all have the power in your hand. I work for government, and before that, I actually thought my voice doesn't matter. It does. They listen to you. So please call your elected officials. This is the time. This is more important than ever for us to be able to talk about the importance of international trade and to get the talent from around the world so that we're part of this world. So please contact your elected officials and continue to advocate on behalf of international trade and additional talent coming into this region.
One more applause for the panelists and to David for putting this together.
And for our moderator, thank you so much for this. Thank you, Tom. I'll talk to you later. Thanks again. Awesome. Well, thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.